Today I'm going to be showing you how to install vinyl flooring, and the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a piece of vinyl that's a little bit oversized, leaving yourself at least a couple inches extra on all the edges. Now it's time to decide which edge you're going to start with. Once you determine which edge you're going to start with, you're going to go ahead and square the vinyl up with that edge first. If you have any corners to go around, you can just simply roll up the vinyl so you can square it up easily. And remember to make sure to leave yourself extra on the remaining sides that you don't have squared up yet. So here's a look at the extra on the side, and then this is the side I'm squaring up first. And then where this corner is located, I went ahead and folded the vinyl back so I could square this up easier. Now it's time to go ahead and notch out where the cabinets are going to be. So I'm going to use my tape measure and a straight edge. I'm going to just use a level here and mark exactly where the cabinets are laid out on the floor. So you don't want to cut to the exact depth of the cabinet. You want to make sure to cut it a little bit deeper than the cabinet so it leaves you extra room on the edges for air. Also, you want to be careful not to cut too deep or you'll damage the subfloor underneath your vinyl. And if you're afraid of damaging the floor, you can go ahead and put a piece of cardboard underneath your cut. Now I'm going to push the vinyl in place. And I can't push it all the way back yet because I cut it a little bit long. So I'm going to go ahead and roll up the edges so I can push it all the way against the cabinet. So on the edges, I'm not doing any finish cuts yet. I'm going to get the whole thing cut with a rough cut first before we do any finish cuts. Now it's time to cut the opposite side. So I'm going to get the vinyl to where it's flush against the corner where I'm going to be making my cut. And remember to keep your cuts oversized to leave plenty of room for error. Now it's time to start doing some finer cuts. A trick I use is to put the blade only a quarter of the way out, and that gives me more control with the utility blade there. And then I angle it at about a 45-degree angle in the corner. So when you're learning to cut vinyl, you should start off with only cutting a couple inches at a time to make sure that the gaps are not too big between the flooring and the wall. You want to make sure the gaps are no bigger than 1/4 inch or it won't look good. On this outside edge, the carpet's going to overlap the vinyl with a seam binder, so all I need to do is cut off the excess. So here's another tip when you're cutting edges. You can manually make a crease with your hands by pushing firmly into the corners to give yourself a guideline to follow with the utility knife. Okay, now we got all our finished cuts done. We got good cuts all the way around here, and now it's time to add some glue. So to keep the flooring from moving and coming out of position, I'm only going to glue half the floor at a time. So I'm simply just rolling up one half of the flooring right now. And you'll want to make sure to use the right glue for the floor. I have a foam bag vinyl, so I'll be using a pressure sensitive glue. This type of glue is different because it never fully dries and remains tacky. And then to spread the glue, I'm going to be using an 1/8 inch notched trowel. So you'll want to spread a nice even coat of glue on the entire floor surface. Here's a closer look on how the glue should look. You want to just have the teeth trowel mark showing like this. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the floor covered with glue here. And then it's time to put the flooring in place. So you want to be very careful to try to do this as evenly as possible and not to put the face of the vinyl on the glue. And also, if possible, you want to try to avoid putting any weight on the side of the floor that has glue. So now it's time to press the floor into place and remove any bubbles. There's a couple different ways we can do this. We can use a linoleum roller. These are about a 100-pound roller, and you can rent them at hardware stores. And this is what I'd recommend to use if you're doing any big areas, anything bigger than 15 foot by 15 foot. And for smaller areas, you can use a hand roller like this. Although this is not my favorite way of doing vinyl. I'm not a big fan of these. And what I actually like to use is a window mop. It's got a plastic rigid frame, and then it's got a cover that goes on top of it. And this cover allows me to press on the top of the vinyl firmly and slide on top of the floor without sticking to it and remove any bubbles. And this particular one I have screws into a broom handle, so it makes it really easy to use on the floor. So I'm going to use this kind of like a squeegee. I'm going to start in the center and press very firmly and work my way to the outside edges. And if you're using a roller, it's pretty much the same process. You're going to start in the center and then work your way to the outside edges. So I usually end up going over the floor at least 3 or 4 times, just to ensure that there's no bubbles stuck in the floor. Now it's time to do the other side. So we're simply going to roll up this side just like we did the other side. Pull it back to where it meets the other glue. Now we're going to glue that surface. And now we're going to unroll the vinyl, being careful again not to step on it. And now it's time to press it into place. Be sure to go over it multiple times to make sure that there's no bubbles. So here's a look at what we've done so far. Everything's glued down in place. Now it's time to install your trim or some sort of sealant. For this particular job, we decided not to remove the trim, so I'm going to seal the edges with a latex caulking. You'll need a sponge or a rag handy. I like using a sponge because it absorbs more. So I'm going to apply a thin bead of caulking here where the floor meets the trim. And I'm going to gently use my finger to spread the caulking and then wipe it off onto my sponge. And the wetter your finger is, the easier it is to spread the caulking. And don't worry, if you make a mess with the caulking, you can always start over. It's water based, so you can just use your sponge to wipe it back off and start all the way over. Practice makes perfect. And here's a look at it now that I'm done caulking. And for the cabinets, I'm going to be using a base coat trim. So here's a look at the base coat glue I'll be using. It comes in a silicone tube. So I've got my piece of base coat pre-cut already. We just need to add some glue to the back of it and press it firmly into place. And if any glue squeezes out, be sure to have a damp rag handy to wipe off immediately before it dries. Alright, let's take a look at the finished product. We have all our edges sealed, we have the base coat up, and we have a nice looking finished product. And here's a tip for you. When you go to move your fridge or your stove back into the kitchen, I'd make sure to use a dolly. A lot of your new vinyl floors are very soft and can tear very easily when you move your appliances back on the floor. So that's why I recommend using a dolly so you don't damage your new floor. Well, that's all for today. If you want to hear more from me, please like and subscribe.